over to Toffene Kama from Mercy Core Ventures. Toffene, do you want to introduce yourself and then maybe set the stage for the panel and then take it away from here for the next 25 minutes or so?
Yeah, thank you, John. My name is Toffene Kama. I'm the principal investor for Mercy Core. I'm based here in Dakar, in Senegal. I've joined Mercy Core quite recently, actually last year. I'm a former founder. I founded two companies, one in the remittance sector in 2012, and the second one was in the mobility space in 2012. I'm a West African, but I spent significant part of my career in East Africa, which is very unusual. I have a background in telcos. I was the head of mobile money for Millicom in Chad and then other countries. And I also have had a few roles in the crypto space. That's what basically brought my interest in. I was, for example, the head of product for Chama Pesa, one of the first like blockchain trying to put on chain all these chamas, which are the rotating credit saving groups, very renowned everywhere in Africa and probably beyond.
Awesome, cool. Well, the four founders we've got today for our conversation, we've got Kennedy from Shamba Network. Feel free to wave, Kennedy. Haley from Fallow, Greg from Coco Networks, and Madhur from Varaha. So yeah, do you want to kick off on moderating the panel, Toffene, and take it from here?
Excellent. So as I said, my interest in ReFi is really from me being based and having grown up here in the global South. I look at ReFi and then Web3 as weapons. We are in a region where there are so many issues, so many challenges. Most of them include physical and even social elements. So I don't look at Web3 as the solution on its own. I look at it as a weapon. And I really like the fact that all these 3 or 4 companies are, some of them coming from the global South. More generally, I think that, for example, most of the products that we consume today have coming from supply chain that are coming from the global South. So whenever I see a like MRV product, I'd like to see how that basically affect those supply chains. Same for companies that are, for example, on Web2 and that can or should be leveraging, for example, carbon credits. So I'm very happy to see all of these are represented in the team. Maybe I'll start with Kennedy from Shamba Network. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what Shamba does? And I'll come back to you with more specific questions.
Thank you, Toffene, and I'm glad to be here. So my name is Kennedy Nganga. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm the founder and CEO at Shamba. And at Shamba, what we are building is basically a decentralized monitoring, reporting, and verification network, and also an ecological data oracle to provide Web3 with data about the real world. So we started doing this back in, I think, around November 2021. We realized that there were a lot of applications building in Web3 that needed to have data about the real world. And we realized that the biggest challenge that there was having that infrastructure that can allow people to tap into things like sensors, satellites, and the rest and get that data on chain. So we started by solving that problem. And we were able to build an oracle that has now deployed close to 60 satellite datasets, enabling anybody to use data around any ecological aspect, whether it's how much vegetation there is in an area, if there's a wildfire or not. And we've already seen people actually using this data to build solutions that impact people here in Africa. So like one of our partners is using this data to build solution for herders. You guys know East Africa was hit by a bad drought last year, and a lot of those herders lost their cattle. So using satellite data to determine the lack of that vegetation and how cattle are impacted and having people get paid out using smart contracts. And as we were doing this, we realized that farmers were really also looking for affordable monitoring, reporting, and verification. A lot of the carbon credits that have been happening in Africa have been relying on traditional MRV, which has tended to be very expensive. So we set out on this journey to build a verification and validation framework based around digital tools, leveraging satellite data and a lot of models, but also leveraging a decentralized network of experts who can collect the data that is required and compile it in such a way that it can provide what is needed. And we are making great progress with this. We've actually kicked off some pilots in Kenya, in the central part of Kenya, in the western part. And we are looking forward to this really maturing, as we believe it will allow a lot of farmers to get into climate action and to be able to do it in a way that is affordable and leaves them with the majority of the benefits generated through this exercise. So really excited to be here and looking forward to chatting with you all. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Kennedy. Next is Haley. Haley, are you here?
Hi everyone, I'm Haley. Nice to see everybody. I come with a sustainability background. I'll just give a little bit about myself first, but come with a sustainability background. I've been in the climate and sustainability space for about 15 years, studied environmental science, and then spent a long time in climate change communication. And one of the things that that was part of my work there looked at things like climate justice and how climate change affects different communities inequitably. And so I got really interested in how decarbonization strategies could also be a mechanism for improving climate justice and improving climate equity. So I got an MBA and then got really interested in the carbon markets as well. And so that's when I started, I got together with some of the co-founders and decided to start working on the beginnings of the idea of Thallo. And so what Thallo is we are well, first and foremost, we're a team of folks who have sustainability backgrounds and also Web3 backgrounds. And we're building an exchange for businesses and individuals to be able to buy, sell, trade, and retire carbon credits really directly from the project developers who develop those projects. So trying to cut out the intermediaries in the market. And we base our technology, we use blockchain as sort of the core of our technology stack. And that is to improve transparency and traceability in the industry, but also to help align some of the incentives in the industry. So for instance, one of the things that we're working on is having royalty schemes so that kind of like an NFT style where projects that or carbon credits that get sold to one entity that then sells them on to another in a secondary trade, a percentage of the revenues that happen on that secondary trade go back to the original project developer. So we're very focused on project developers. While I am based in London and I'm from the US originally, a lot of the project developers we're working with, including Kennedy and Greg, who is on this call, I think, are based in the global South. So we really try to listen to the project developers, figure out what can we do to help improve access to the market, and then really align incentives and make them fairer.
Excellent, excellent. Let me pass it to Greg then from Coco Network. I find this product absolutely fantastic. Up to you, Greg.
Thanks, Toffene. Hi all. So I'm Greg. I'm originally an Aussie and have been a venture investor and now sort of turned entrepreneur. Focused on emerging markets for the last 20 years, building stuff across Latin America and Asia, and the last decade or so in Africa. So living out in East Africa for the last 10 years about, and then recently moved to London to set up an office for Coco. Also have gone deep, we're talking about climate, also have sort of spent a lot of time sort of student of the carbon markets for 25 years since Kyoto, but participating for about 15 years. And Coco has really built, part of the founding thesis is that we're going to have a price on carbon in a compliance market. I think the voluntary markets are weird and illogical in the sense that I don't agree, in the same way that I don't agree with voluntary taxation. I think there's no sort of real fundamental driver. Big fan of compliance pricing on carbon and emissions trading in general. But Coco is we're a 9-year-old climate tech startup, 1,800 staff across East Africa and India. And we've invested something like $160 million quietly in building out a renewable fuel utility across 5 cities now in Kenya. And what we're doing is retailing a liquid ethanol-based cooking fuel through a dense network of high-tech fuel ATMs located inside small shops in the neighborhoods, in the low-income neighborhoods. Think of the for folks that understand a New York bodega with a cash ATM in the corner. except it's taller and it dispenses fuel, not cash. But it's the same logic. It's an agent-based model. So we team up with shopkeepers. They're our partners, and we partner with the founders that are, that are mum and pop shopkeepers. Install these machines, have a fleet of smart micro tankers that do the distribution, have the infrastructure partnerships, have the manufacturing facilities, have written the legislation in Kenya. So really one of these sort of very long burn. We had 500 staff in Q4 2019 before we had any revenue, 5 years into our existence. And Stephen was one of those crazy sort of early investors back in 2016 when we were in sort of PowerPoints and prototypes hacking away in a garage. And Satoshi and his mates from Keppel are also shareholders from, I think, 2019 onwards, and then also with their larger fund. So asked me to come along here today. I'm not a guy that has any real experience in Web3, blockchain, or crypto. It's fair to say I've got a degree of skepticism about it, not out of any malintent, simply out of being underinformed. What I do think is some real problems with the carbon market that are more substantive than can be solved with blockchain, I believe. Maybe that's a part of the solution, but happy to dive into sort of where I see it and where I think it might go as well.
Sure. Let me just give the word back to Mahadur from Vahara. Can you just give us a few words?
Sure. So my name is Madhur Jain. I'm one of the 3 co-founders at Varaha. And in terms of my background, I'm an agricultural engineer by background, and have built 2 enterprises in the past. One on behavior change for smallholder farmers, along with Michael Kramer, who is the Nobel Prize recipient for behavior change. And also I founded the India office of a world's most valued edtech firm called Indigo. And so I've worked across venture investing, agri input markets, agri output markets, financial services for smallholder farmers. And while working with smallholder farmers over the last 10 years, I realized that it has a huge impact on the climate space as well. And that's when I started Varaha along with 2 of my co-founders 9 months back. And what we essentially do is we help smallholder farmers in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh transition to regenerative or sustainable practices, which not only helps reduce the emissions which are happening, but also at the same time help increase the soil organic carbon. And I think it becomes really important from the perspective that it not only helps the environment, it also makes agriculture more adapted to the climate change by making soils more healthier. And in the last 9 months, we've been able to access more than 300,000 acres of regenerative land. We work with close to 55,000 farmers as we speak, and we've almost reduced 500,000 carbon credits from the atmosphere through this process so far. And really looking forward to this discussion and seeing how we can collaborate with some of the other folks on this panel and otherwise with other participants as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks everyone for these introductions. I'll start with just a few more specific questions, given we have now everyone on board. Maybe I'll start with Talo. That we have basically 2 types of companies here. Some of them have like ReFi or Web3 at their core, like for example, Talo. And others are really more like Web2 companies, and they're trying to see how they can leverage either carbon credit or Web3 or both. So I think that's a very interesting mix. Starting from Talo, I've seen a number of announcements recently. So maybe you can just give us a bit of a background about some of those recent moves from Talo, how you guys are operating today, how you see the market, how things are evolving. If you can even give us maybe a few words about this whole bridge as a service. I found that really fantastic. Hayley, up to you.
Yeah, lots of questions in there. I'll try to be brief. But So that's exactly where we think about positioning our company. Is you have the legacy carbon markets that have been in operation, as Greg pointed out, for 20, 25 years. And then there's all this incredible tech and innovation happening that kind of gives us a vision of what the carbon markets could look like in the future with digital MRV, on-chain, all of this. And so we really try to be at the intersection of that to help work with some of those legacy actors to bring them into the space where they're comfortable using blockchain technology and see its benefits. So you're right. We've made some announcements recently. our most recent announcement is that we have signed a deal with a company called IMPT, where we will be supplying carbon credits to them for their protocol, which essentially offers carbon credits as a reward, kind of like you would get a reward points at a supermarket when you make purchases. So they receive those rewards in carbon credits. So the bridging as a service, what that refers to is we have essentially created a two-way bridge to bring carbon credits from a registry with the consent and collaboration of the carbon registry onto the blockchain. And those credits can then be moved off of the blockchain if the holder of the credits would like to do that. But it's really something that we are offering up to anybody who wants to use that infrastructure as a way to link the on-chain carbon markets to the existing infrastructure. So far we have partnered with Biocarbon Registry, which is based out of Colombia, is a nature-based, particularly and Latin America focused registry. And then we also will be announcing very soon another registry that we are integrating with. So this is very, very much kind of a way of providing infrastructure that we hope will be helpful to other projects to start to move towards that potential future of on-chain carbon credits. Excellent.
Thank you, Haley. Another question I have is about MRV. We've seen a lot of MRV platform recently, some doing, for example, offsetting, others doing even insetting. But my only worry always is how do you do really MRV when the project is like hundreds of miles or thousands of miles away? So maybe this question is from Kennedy. The fact that you are on the ground, very close to the farmers, what is the advantage that give you compared to other MRV platforms that also have access to satellite data? I was just curious if the fact that you are based in the region basically provides any advantage.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Toffene. I would say that yes, having boots on the ground definitely does confer certain advantages to MRV. I think part of the reason why traditional MRV has tended to be expensive is because you have these closed groups of experts who have to travel sometimes from different continents, and they have these high logistical costs, and they're doing most of this just to collect the data. And it's not to say that in that particular country there are no experts who can collect that data. There are. So being able to use a decentralized paradigm whereby MRV, rather than being confined to this small centralized group of experts, can be decentralized into a wider network of people who have the relevant skills to collect that data, it just reduces the cost factor by a huge margin, because then you're able to cut out a lot of logistical costs. And when you combine that ground presence with the digital tools, as we are saying, these new technologies that can be tapped into, machine learning, satellite data, and all the rest, it just helps to really change the economics of the whole MRV paradigm. And I think that is the biggest advantage that DMRV has over traditional MRV, is that it can be able to provide a whole different economic regime, and this allows the whole system to be much more affordable, especially to those smallholder farmers who cannot really put up projects that are very big, and so they need to be able to afford the cheap MRV. So this is one of the biggest advantages of the decentralization of the whole MRV process. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Kennedy. My next question is to Coco. I'm kind of fascinated with this product, which have a significant platform and software kind of angle, and then still have a significant physical elements like these Coco points, the micro supply chain that you have to provide this fuel. So that whole network, which is physical. So my question comes back to how are you using carbon credit? Like, for example, in my experience, I see companies using carbon credit in two ways. In one way, they look at it as a new revenue stream parallel to what they're doing. That's one way. A second way is as an incentive, for example, to bootstrap the network, especially when you have a network where you need kind of some change in behavior. For example, people cooking in a certain way and changing. So I was just curious how you're using this. Is this like a new source of revenue, or is this a way to incentivize or to bootstrap the network? And the reason why I think this is super important is you might be also building a playbook for a number of companies that I see in the global south that might actually leverage carbon credit, but don't know how to. So we are still looking for the right playbook.
Sure. So if you want to try and drive behavior at scale, you need to have an individual relationship with the actors that are actually changing their behavior. So this idea of identity is important. This idea of a wallet, right, is important. This idea of being able to provide cash to the people whose behavior you want to change is really important. You know, if you're dealing in mass market Kenya or similar to mass market India, you know, a lot of people are buying their fast-moving consumer goods on a daily basis. So, you know, airtime is sort of like a proxy for cash, given the frequency of purchase, as is fuel. And so what we actually do is we aggressively share the majority of the carbon revenue with the households through their wallet in order to enable them to switch from dirty fuels to clean fuel in a manner that enables us to essentially scale to the extent of our supply constraints without really being stuck by the sort of the tyranny of the low-income wallet. Yeah, so we're able to sort of bundle the carbon into the retail price of the fuel, into the retail price of the cooker, and you know, influence behavior. What is the behavior we want? Buy our fuel. You know, it improves your life, but it's also lower cost than dirty fuel, right? And so you've got to get those. You know, we have over 30% of all homes in the Nairobi metro that are cooking on our platform every single day, buying fuel from one of these 1,800 shops that we have across. You know, so it's behavior. It's sort of driving this energy transition. But the core economic lever is carbon markets. You know, in the West, you know, places like America, despite its land of the free and all of that nonsense, it's actually a cooking infrastructure welfare state, as is the UK and Europe. It was all entirely government-funded cooking infrastructure. There was no private money in it. This is pre-privatization of utilities, and they're very wealthy places. And so the idea that there's sort of a way to do this without some other external source of value at scale is sort of really tricky, right? And so clearly there's no government money, there's no subsidy available. So what we figured out how to do is to harness the carbon markets, mainline it into the wallets, into the hands of households in order to get them to actually use our solution. And so as the commodity prices of fuel go like this, and as the commodity prices of carbon, we're sort of essentially bundling and providing sort of you know, international customer experience, but you know, fighting the good fight every day in the neighborhoods. But ultimately, we earn revenue from Fortune 1000 companies in hard currency, in addition to you know, some of the lowest income folks in the suburbs of Nairobi in you know, in shillings. And so it's a you know, clean, not so secret you know, of cocoa. That's how we've been able to do it. Yes, it's a great product. Yes, it's low cost. Yes, we've invested heavily, but we've got our thumb on the scale versus dirty fuels because of carbon. And my comments around my curiosity around for you guys in this sort of Web3 crypto space. And one of the things I'd love to talk to someone that you know, is you know, people are pursuing all of these sort of marketplaces, and you know, climate tech's now a thing. It's hot now, right? And everyone wants to sass their way out of climate, which is sort of a bit of a tricky thing to do. But a lot of the folks that are playing in the intermediation space in carbon are pretending that carbon is a commodity, when clearly it doesn't have the definition of a commodity. You know, there's prices in the market of $2 a ton to $1,800 a ton, right? By definition, it's not a commodity. There's a wide variety of quality. There's all sorts of fraud and bullshit that goes on in the market. And so in my mind, it sort of, if you're going to have liquidity and scale, it resembles a listed equities market, or maybe even a bunch of crypto coins, some of which are coins, some of which are useful, right? But the point is, it's not this idea of trying to commoditize everything and call it a project type and label it, oh, you're a cook stove thing or you're Red Plus. That is actually the opposite of what I'm observing at the premium end of the market where we operate, where there is a lot of friction, a lot of high touch, but ultimately, you know, it smells like an equity raise process, selling into the premium end of the market rather than a commodity sale.
Thanks, Greg, again. The last question was maybe from Mahdoud. Just what was the experience of fundraising, especially in this space, compared to maybe more traditional sectors? And this is also a question to everyone in the panel. But up to you, Mahdoud, please.
No, thanks. So see, as I mentioned, that we are a 9-month-old startup, and but we come with a lot of experience of working with smallholder farmers. And so we quickly realized that I think we use a lot of word on the tech side, which is extremely important to scaling things up and having a product in place which can scale things when working with smallholder farmers. But when you talk about agricultural carbon credits, it's more about the science part of it. So you're talking about gases in soil organic carbon, which are dynamic mediums, right? So it's not so much about tech. First of all, it's important to sort out the science behind as to how soil organic carbon moves, how gases are created because of different practices within the agricultural realm, and how do they increase or decrease over a period of time because of different interventions. So I think having a sophisticated approach around understanding, first of all, the agricultural well, the soil mediums, the gaseous mediums, and then building a product on top of it, which is a combination of biogeochemical modeling as well as remote sensing, and putting a right team around it, really helped us create a story which is much more scientific while being also technology backed at the same time. So because of this reason, I think it really resonated with a lot of investors who basically, for whom, when we reached out to the VC investors, we saw that for them, climate tech was mostly EVs, electric vehicles, and batteries. And so it took almost 3 to 4 months of education to say that how agriculture can also be a solution towards climate change, and how these high quality carbon credits backed by science and tech can really create a difference in the income of the farmers. And I think by educating not just the farmers, but also the venture capitalists that we spoke to, it really helped, because we raised one of the biggest rounds in climate tech in Asia at $4 million a couple of months back in a very short period of time. And I think it's because of the fact that there was a lot of education which was required. So I think putting together the right set of team which understands that how tough smallholder agriculture is, first of all, and then also sort of building the right set of people and the team, and then making the sector understand the complexity and the size of the opportunity. That is what really helps build a story with the investors and getting some amount of success with it, especially in this kind of a market right now. Yeah, so that has been our experience so far.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think that many others in the panel would also certainly agree with you on the need for educating, obviously, both customers but also investors in a new market, in a new industry. So thanks everyone for your participation on this panel. Thanks you all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to highlight, I think, particularly Greg at the end, the challenges you're making to the patterns you're seeing in the on-chain market, and Wadur, the type of scientific rigor you're taking to define these methodologies and build trust are both really important vectors of the culture I feel like we need to propagate in order to be the most effective, I'll use the word regenerators of the earth that we all share and depend upon. So thank you, everyone. We're 2 minutes over. I'll let y'all leave, but my hope is that we can host regular conversations like these, bringing up top investors, hearing their theses, top founders from across the space, and really, sharing the insights and learnings that are taking us forward towards a planet that we can sustain for generations to come. I'm a father. I've got 2 young kids. I want to see them have a future, and I want to see a stable climate with biodiversity all over the place and just systems where everybody is taken care of and their needs are met. So here's to that future. Thank you for all of you for playing the role that you played. It's been a pleasure getting to know a lot of new faces today. We are raising a Gitcoin grant over the next 10 days. If anyone wants to support, check us out on Twitter at ReFi Daoist. And super grateful to Tim and Toffene at Mercy Core Ventures and to Pranav at ReFi by South for putting this together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.